What's going on, guys? TowerNumberNine here, and today we're going to be talking about one card that I think FFG should change and how they could do it without using any errata. Let's get into it. So, Jump to Lightspeed has been a great set. I think it's probably been the best set since Spark of Rebellion. It might even be better than Spark of Rebellion itself. Overall, the power level is feeling really good. The new mechanics work well. We're seeing them see a fair bit of competitive play. It feels more on par with that first set, Spark of Rebellion, power level wise. Sets 2 and 3 felt like they were a bit weaker, especially set 3, where relatively few cards from the set ended up seeing play. But, Jump to Lightspeed has given us a bunch of good cards, including, pilots, ships, just there's a wide range of cool effects in this set. And the balance changes they made have been really positive too. They've really opened things up after it looked like Django was maybe going to be a bit oppressive. Competitive play has a diverse and interesting meta. I've been casting some tournaments and stuff, and we're seeing a bunch of different decks. I played in the Denver sector event, and that was a lot of fun, and there were a wide range of decks being played there too. Overall, I think it's a really good time to be playing Star Wars Unlimited, and Fantasy Flight Games is doing a good job. But there's one more thing that I would want to change to try and improve things further, and I think it's a relatively simple change. So those three suspensions worked great. Django Fett, Triple Dark Raid, and DJ, happy to see him go. Think we're in a good spot without him, but there is that one more thing, and that is pilot leaders right now are seeing some play, but they're suffering from upgrade removal. And sometimes they have to be played to the ground for safety. Now, that's part of the design. It isn't inherently a problem. But there's one card which FFG could easily change, which I think makes this problem a lot worse. That has an unusual impact, and a rulebook or a ruling change could solve it. That card, as you may have guessed, is Bamboozle. So there is an unusual ruling on Bamboozle. Bamboozle is a card. It is a 2-cost Cunning Heroism event. You may discard a Cunning card from your hand instead of paying this event's cost, exhaust a unit, and return each upgrade on it to its owner's hand. Now, there is a ruling from one of the developers that means that this actually defeats upgrade leaders. And this is a major issue because Bamboozle can be played for 0. And it's easier to put into your main deck than a lot of upgrade removal cards because it is a usable card as an exhaust, even if you're not removing an upgrade, if you're in like an aggro race or similar. And it also serves as a useful card actually against some control decks, even if a control deck is using cards like Lieutenant Childson. Because Bamboozle returns upgrades to its owner's hand, experience and shields get removed completely since they can't go into the hand and be played normally. So this is actually a very usable card against control decks if they're using cards that rely on experience or shields, and we commonly see control decks that are playing those cards. Whether that be, someone playing Luke Skywalker, more mid-rangey defensive deck, playing those village protectors, giving them an extra shield, sometimes really difficult to deal with. Bamboozle can deal with those shields easily, or Lieutenant Childson from various villain vigilance decks. You can knock off all the experience tokens at once with this and make him a lot easier to clear. Um, and so it becomes really difficult for pilot leaders to deal with. And it's a big feels bad moment too if you are able to defeat your opponent's leader for 0. And there's a big difference between being able to play Bamboozle for 0 and even something like Confiscate, which only costs 1. Because if you see that your opponent's exhausted all their resources, normally that means, okay, I'm guaranteed to get at least one swing with this leader if I flip now. Even if they have the Confiscate or the Disabling Fang Fighter, they can't play it this turn. I have my window. But with Bamboozle, that window isn't there. And it can be very frustrating because of that possibility to play it for 0. But it doesn't need errata to change this, because as far as I know, the relevant ruling for Bamboozle is this post from developer Tyler Parrott on Twitter, which is a leader that's returned to hand is defeated. This will be covered by the rules. I looked through the rules and I'm not actually sure it's in like the current rule book, but if you go to like the judge section of the Cascade Games website, they point out this clarification and link to this specific Twitter post from Tyler as to how Bamboozle interacts with leader upgrades. I think this is the only card in the game right now that allows you to potentially return a leader card to its owner's hand, and thus the only card where this ruling applies. If someone else has a more specific look, I looked through the rule book for some time, or the comprehensive rules, and was not able to find the specific part in the rules other than this ruling itself. If someone could find it and post it in the comments, that would be great. That being said, my proposed change is really simple. If an change it so that instead of it being in the previous one, a leader that's returned to hand is just defeated. Have it be if an effect a player controls would return another player's leader to its owner's hand, ignore that part of the effect. If an effect a player controls would return that player's leader to its owner's hand, the leader is defeated instead. So the reason now you could just say leaders can't be returned to their owner's hands. Ignore those effects. That would also maybe work. The reason I have that second part there is to forestall certain tactics. So, for instance, with this second part of the ruling, you would not be able to bamboozle your own pilot leader and have the bamboozle not affect you in order to remove a negative upgrade. So right now, if it was just that leaders can't be returned to hand, you would be able to, for instance, if your opponent plays perilous position on your pilot leader, you could bamboozle yourself to bounce their perilous position. This removes that opportunity. Similarly, you could use that to bounce bounties or whatever. And it's also a bit of future proofing in case there's some like future cards that would allow you to potentially return leaders to hand, trying to make it so that if you are trying to do some trick, your leader still gets defeated, but your opponent can't use these effects to just kill your leader. Now, it's possible there are future cards that this would mess up, but at least for this set and this meta, I think it would help. And Bamboozle is, as far as I know, the only card that this affects, because I believe it is the only card that returns upgrades that returns upgrades to hand in this way, and all the other cards that return cards to hand specifically say non-leader. Bamboozle doesn't target non-leader. It maybe because upgrade leaders presumably didn't exist when this card was designed. Um, but it's kind of a weird state right now. And again, if this change is too complicated, you could just say leaders can't be returned to their owner's hands. If an effect would return a leader to its owner's hand, ignore that part of the effect, which would be a lot less complicated, but would prevent some of those scenarios where you bamboozle yourself. So this would make pilot leaders a bit stronger, and it would also remove a really annoying situation. So Luke Skywalker, Hero of Yavin, is supposed to be the pilot leader that you play if you're worried about upgrade removal. This upgrade can't be defeated by enemy card abilities. Unfortunately, Bamboozle actually still kills him because it isn't the card ability that defeats him. It is this ruling about what happens if a leader goes to hand. And this is again, you can look on the judge Discord or whatever. This is the ruling on Luke. He is defeated by Bamboozle, which is really annoying. um, but you would still be able to remove most of the non-Luke leaders by normal upgrade removal. So you would still be able to play Confiscate. You would still be able to play Disabling Fang Fighter. You'd still be able to play Aggression. But a player with a pilot leader would now be able to know that they were safe against opponents with all resources exhausted, whereas right now they are not safe, at least against cunning heroism in that situation. I've talked to people who have been like, oh yeah, I play cunning Sabine. I remember talking to someone at Denver who said, oh yeah, I just have to deploy on the ground. I can't deploy my leader because if you have Bamboozle, I just lose. That's not an exact quote, but and I was running Bamboozle in my main deck because it's really, really good against pilot leaders. And I think it's a little unfairly good, to be honest. And this change, I don't think it's the biggest deal. I don't think Bamboozle is like destroying the meta or anything, but I think that it would help, and it would be a very slight change given that it is already a somewhat obscure ruling that allows this. So if the somewhat obscure ruling were reversed and made it so that Bamboozle didn't kill leaders, I think it would be relatively unobjectionable and probably a better state overall, at least in terms of balance for these pilot leaders. That's just my opinion. And I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's like, oh, FFG, you must do this or the game is broken. But I do think that at least here in the jump to Lightspeed meta, we would be in a better spot if Bamboozle did not work on pilot leaders. So that is my change, and it notably does not require errata. So Fantasy Flight Games is averse to using balance errata with the game as a whole. Balance errata is where they change a card's text so it doesn't do what was originally printed on the card. I think there are a few cards that have like rules and functionality errata, but that's kind of a different thing where it's just like the official wording of the card is changed to function more properly with the rules, but it doesn't really affect things because those cards basically function the way that they would anyway, or the way that people expect them to, as I understand it. Balance errata is really different. So balance errata would be like, let's say they decide IG-88 is not a balanced card. IG-88 is too weak. We're changing him, and IG-88 now has a 5th hit point, and we're going to print him like that in future versions of the set. But even if you have the current version, just play him with the 5th hit point. That would be an example of balance errata, and they're averse to that. It causes a lot of problems in physical games. In digital games, that's a very different scenario, and you know there are much more in the world of digital card games. People patch things like that more quickly, but I think it's actually a pretty reasonable decision not to want to do it for a physical card game. It causes a lot of issues. But Bamboozle, this issue is not created by the card text itself. It is just this ruling that makes it so that it kills leaders. The ruling could easily go the other way. And if the ruling went the other way, no one's Bamboozle card would stop functioning. No one's Bamboozle card would say the wrong thing. You could still play it. It just wouldn't kill leaders. Similarly, I think suspending Bamboozle would be overdoing it, because I don't think Bamboozle is a broken card. I think just this specific interaction is weird. And banning the card or suspending it would seem like it was maybe overdoing it with a card that doesn't need a heavy change, maybe just sort of this subtle change. I personally think it's a good solution. I'd love to see FFG do it, especially because it's just like this ruling thing that they could change. But that being said, as I said earlier, I think the game's in a pretty good spot. I don't think it's necessary. I just think that pilot leaders would be in a better state if they would do that. So that's my change. What do you think? Do you think, FFG change this ruling, make it so that Bamboozle doesn't kill pilots? Or do you think that actually it's good that Bamboozle kills pilot leaders and that needs to be part of the game? Or do you have some other solution that's even more subtle or even more desirable? I'd be curious to hear what you think. Personally, this is one of those things that it's an annoying moment, and it's something that I think is a little frustrating, especially when I'm trying to make pilot leader decks work. But is it a totally necessary change? No. But would it improve the game? I think yes. Anyway, those are my thoughts on one card that FFG could change to, in my view, improve the game. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.